Hey everyone, Final here. Today, I'll be showing you my quick and easy paint scheme for painting a World Eaters Slaughterbound. In case you haven't seen my other painting videos, I love building in sub-assemblies, even if it's actually not needed. However, for the Slaughterbound, it's actually really hard to build in sub-assemblies. The arms have to be built in a certain order, so it's not something that can be attached later. The best that I could do was the main body with the head, arms, and legs attached, the little belt buckle, and the power pack. The belt buckle might not be 100% necessary, but I do think that leaving the power pack off will make it a lot easier. Anyway, let's get started. I started off by spraying everything with Mephiston Red, and I'll work on the skin first because it has the most dry brushing. I went in with a couple of layers of Rakarth flesh. It definitely needs a couple of layers, but it's good to let each layer dry completely first. Oh, just a side note, apologies for a slightly croaky video. I'm still feeling under the weather. Once I have a solid layer of Rakarth flesh, I go in and wash it with Caribur Crimson. I really want to make sure that it pools in the recesses. Once I'm all done washing the skin, I'll let it dry for about half an hour, before going in and doing a heavy dry brush with Rakarth flesh. I want the skin to be pale, while leaving the crimson in the nooks and crannies. And that's how it looks after the dry brushing. There's a couple more details to paint up. First, I'll go in with Leadbelcher on the butcher's nails, and then I'll wash them with Nuln Oil. I'll wash the teeth too to give them some definition. Then, I'll carefully paint the eyes with White Scar, followed by Blood Angel's Red. There we go, now the nails are really biting. After I'm done with that, I'll move on to the armor. I'll be using some Mephiston Red to fix up the armor first. It's really just for any spots that I missed while priming, or anything that I hit while dry brushing. After that, I'll wash all of the red armor with Berserker Bloodshade. And then dry brush it with Evil Sun's Scarlet. The armor on the legs is basically half muscle, so we really want to highlight that. And because I always forget, I'll use some Black Templar for the joints. Next up, I'll paint up these blood canisters. I'll start off with a base of Grey Seer, and then paint over it with Flesh Terror's Red. I'll leave the trim till later. I'll hop over to the Lacerator with some Iron Warriors. I'll throw that on the chain as well. Afterwards, I'll paint the Lacerator with Black Templar. The Black Templar is pretty thin, and it'll let some of the metallic show through. For the symbols, I'll start off with a really thin White Scar. I want it thin enough to wick into the recesses. After that's dry, I'll go in with Gryph-hound Orange, thinned about 1 to 2 with contrast medium. Now the real fun begins. All of that brass trim. I'll go in with Runelord Brass and paint up all of the trim on the armor, the weapon, the blood canisters, everywhere. I've seen a lot of people say to prime in Runelord Brass first, and then fill in the red later. I'm not a huge fan of doing it that way, but I'm mentioning it as an option. Also, another quick note. I was a little overzealous and painted these teeth with brass. You don't have to do that, they'll be a different color later. And after what seems like forever, here's what he looks like. Now, I'll go in with Leadbelcher and finish up the other metallics. There's a lot of small ones, so just take it easy so that you don't miss any. Finally, I'll paint up the bone with Xandri Dust. Now for the wash. I'll use Agrax Earthshade and wash all of the brass, the metal, and the bone. I'll also use a little bit of Nuln Oil for these ports. And what everyone was waiting for, more dry brushing. I'll lightly dry brush some Ushabti bone onto the bone. I'll then do a light dry brush with Canaptic Alloy on all of the metal, both the brass and the gunmetal colors. The Canaptic Alloy will keep the Leadbelcher and the Iron Warriors from looking too clean. After the dry brushing, I'll paint some of the leather bits with Corvus black. And then I'll wash the Corvus black with Nuln oil. For these spikes and nails, I'll start off with some Xandri dust, and then I'll cover them with Black Templar. The Xandri dust should be bright enough to poke through the Black Templar, so they'll end up looking like a black colored bone. I'll also use Black Templar on some of these loose cables. Now for the fleshy cables, I'll start off painting them with Rakkarth flesh. And then I'll wash them with Shyish purple. It'll dry a little splotchy, which is what I want. That makes it look more bruised and pulsating. For the Daemonic Claw, there's kind of a radiant color to it. I would recommend getting these colors on your palette first, before starting to paint. The first one I'll use is Shyish purple, thinned 1:1 with contrast medium. I'll go just a little over halfway down. The second color I'll use is Caribou Crimson, thinned about 1:1 with Lamian medium. I want to start on the opposite end as the Shyish purple, and work my way into it. That way, I can blend them while they're still wet. And here's how to look when it completely dries. There's also a tactical rock and a custody helm attached to the foot. I'll quickly slap some paint onto those before declaring the main body done. Now for the belt buckle, I primed it with Mephiston Red because I primed everything at the same time, but realistically you can use whatever color you want. I'll start off with a little bit of Corvus Black on the leather part. I also jammed some Corvus Black in between the chains as well. Definitely don't do this with a good brush. Next, I paint up the skulls with Xandri dust. And then finally, I threw some Iron Warriors onto the chain. You could paint this in parallel with the body. The only issue is that some of the paints are used in a different order. For the emblem, I put on a couple coats of Runelord brass. All ready for shading. I'll wash the whole thing with Agrax Earthshade. I really wanted to soak in between all the recesses, but try not to let it pool too much, otherwise it'll congeal. After letting it sit for about half an hour, it's starting to take shape. I'm going to very lightly dry brush the chains with Iron Warriors. I only want to brighten some of them up to give it some variation. I'll then dry brush the skulls with Ushabti Bone. Then I'll dry brush the emblem with Canoptic Alloy. And for the last dry brush, I'll use Eshin Grey on the leather part. Lastly, to give some character to the emblem, I'll use Poxwalker. And that's it for this. All that's left is the power pack. So I primed this one in Mephiston Red as well, but I'll still go in with some Mephiston Red base paint to fix up any spots that I missed. Then, I'll wash all the red with Berserker Bloodshade, followed by a dry brushing with Evil Sun Scarlet. Next, I'll use Leadbelcher and paint up the exhaust, the vents, and the brakes in the cable. And then I'll wash them with Nuln oil. I'll paint up these fleshy vents with Rakkarth flesh, and then I'll wash them with Shyish purple. For the bone, I'll start off with Xandri dust. I'll paint the spine, the skulls, and the spikes. To save some time with washing, I'm going to go ahead and paint on the Runelord brass for the trim. And then I'll go in with Agrax Earthshade and wash the spine, the trim, and the skulls, but not the spikes. Once the Agrax is dry, I'll dry brush the bone with Ushabti Bone. And then I'll go in and paint the spikes with Black Templar. I also took some Leadbelcher and painted up the bolt heads. That's it for the power pack. After a little bit of assembly magic, we have one World Eaters Slaughterbound. This model was pretty intimidating when I first started, but I had a lot of fun with it. If you enjoy painting up Exalted 8-bound, this will be right up your alley. I hope you found this video helpful, and again, apologies for the slight croakiness. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.